For more, we speak now with Ian Lustick. He's Professor Emeritus from the Political Science Department at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor Lustick, thank you very much for joining us. I want to start by asking you about three words that appear to be the main sticking point, and that's a sustainable calm. Is there a way mediators can find a compromise for Hamas and for Israel in particular? The Prime Minister Netanyahu, who appears to be caught between his right-wing coalition, and of course he wants to be on the right side of his biggest ally, the United States as well.
Well, I think the mediators, the United States, Qatar, Egypt, have been doing a tremendous amount of work, and they have, I think, arrived at an agreement that has enough ambiguity in it to bridge the gaps that are pretty much otherwise unbridgeable between Hamas and Israel. I think they have done their work. I don't think the issue now is work by the mediators to come to new formulations. I think what we're seeing are fights inside the government in Israel and within Hamas over what story each will be able to tell about what happened that brought about the ceasefire. Why wasn't it a better one, or why was it the one that happened? And each side is trying to get at its final licks, whether it's attacking Israeli soldiers near the Kerem Shalom point, or whether it's this operation, which Israel is describing as a surgical strike, which is the kind of thing the United States said is allowable as opposed to an offensive. So I think both sides are trying to essentially say, when we go into the ceasefire, we'll be able to say that we forced the other side to accept it. And we're seeing some unfortunate, tragic maneuvering around that kind of issue on both sides.
And Professor, in terms of the negotiations, so far it's been a game of chicken, if I can call it that. I mean, who holds the stronger bargaining position now? Who do you think will blink first?
Well, it's very hard to say, and it really depends in part on things we can't know about the Hamas leadership. It appears that they are ready to go to the very end if they don't get certain minimal things. One of the things, but the question is, what is their minimum? One thing that Israel is strongly objecting to now is the number of high-value prisoners that Hamas is demanding, people who have been in prison or have life sentences that Israel considers murderers and Hamas considers heroes. How many of them will be freed as part of the ceasefire agreement? We don't know whether Hamas would accept a deal when it didn't get all of those prisoners back. And we also don't know whether Netanyahu will sign on an agreement which could lead to his demise as a politician. For him, the end of the war means much greater vulnerability to the political and judicial process at a time when his popularity and his vulnerability to legal action is extremely dangerous for him. So it's impossible, really, for me to say who's got the stronger bargaining position. I do think that the United States is the key. The United States has been on record saying that this version of the ceasefire proposal and prisoner hostage exchange is a good one. We have said that, and it makes it very difficult for the Biden administration to then back Israel if it backs away from that deal, which it has signaled it is trying to do, while keeping it a little ambiguous. So I think the crucial thing now is the Biden administration. How strongly will they tell Israel, now is the time, stop the war, move to a different phase altogether?
Professor Lustick, Israel, meantime, seized control of the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing. We know the UN, the US object to this. I mean, what's the goal here? Is this a negotiating tactic, some pressure? Or is it, the idea of just wanting to be there just in case?
Well, there is, from the Israeli point of view, they do want to say the Rafah crossing is crucial. That's where Hamas can collect taxes. It can act as if it controls the Gaza Strip by controlling that. But now I hear that Israel is accepting an American proposal that an American company will handle the transfers at that point. But when you ask, is this all bargaining and posture? I think that Israel's move into Rafah is an attempt to bolster the argument that Netanyahu has been making that that Israeli IDF military forces what will bring the hostages home. So if he can have a successful operation, a visible IDF operation right before the hostages come home, it's a way for him to bolster that argument because he's under tremendous pressure at home. His image is someone who cares more about his political future than he does about the hostages. So I think there's an element of theater about this this terrible attack. But it's also true that Hamas's attack on Israeli soldiers right at the end is also a kind of theater, and that's both sides are out to move to a ceasefire in a way that allows them to tell the story of it that will benefit their leadership.
Professor, Israel seems to be betting that the military can do enough physical damage to Hamas to win security for itself by attacking Rafah, whereas Hamas seems to be betting that it can evade Israel's best efforts to crush it. Who's right here?
Well, I'm not so sure that Israel is right now trying to damage Hamas militarily. Hamas has what they say are 4 units, 4 battalions in Rafah, and the current operation does not look like it's targeted at actually destroying them, but rather doing something, grabbing the crossing, moving tanks in there. It's a very visible operation, but which does not risk large numbers of Israeli soldiers. The only way Israel can fight in Rafah to destroy those battalions and follow American strictures not to kill large numbers of civilians is to move their troops down into the tunnels and fight Hamas down there rather than bombing. And that will result in very heavy Israeli casualties, which is a main reason why I think that kind of fighting has not occurred, and I'd hope that it will not occur.
All right, Professor Lustick, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. We've been speaking with Ian Lustick, Professor Emeritus from the University of Pennsylvania's Department of Political Science.